Thank you, everybody, for giving us some time for us to explain to you all about the national professional qualifications and give you an introduction to what this is about for NPQH, and so that's about headship. Okay. My name is Will Rogers. I'm the NPQ Programme Director at Best Practice Network. I am very proud of these programmes, and that's because I've got a fantastic team that I know support our participants throughout the course. One of those, unfortunately, who would normally be leading this session is Vanessa McDonald, who's our lead facilitator, who's unfortunately not able to be here today, but that's because she's in a school today supporting as a school improvement partner. However, we have got some other guests here. So we've Lyndon Evans is going to be hosting this presentation for us. Lyndon has been a facilitator, or has facilitated for us on top of his day job for many years. He's also completed his NPQ with us as a participant as well. And of course, to support you, the best people for you to hear from are real people who have participated in this course and who have done so recently. And we have two participants from our course who are going to talk to you a little bit later on, who have just submitted their case studies, their summative assessments, and so are very much involved and know exactly what it's like to do this course. And so they will be answering some questions about their experiences a little bit later on. One of the other reasons I'm very proud of these courses is because I get to see in my position the real impact that this is having, and that makes me very proud. So I get to hear from participants who tell me about this course and the impact that it has on them, and also the impact that it has on the pupils in their schools. And so with no further ado, in fact, just before I pass over to Lyndon, it's worth saying that as you'll see, the question and answer box is live, and people have been putting in where they're from, which is fantastic. If you've got any questions, please do add them in there, and we'll either respond to them in the chat, or we'll answer it live. And obviously, this is being recorded. You should have seen that as you came in, and we will be sending this out to people afterwards, so you can always watch it back through if you miss an element or you want to hear something again. So thank you ever so much, and I'm going to pass over to Lyndon.
So we'll just, what we really want to do, as Will said, is give you a really good insight into what the programme is all about, but also give you lots of opportunity to ask as many questions as you'd like. But probably the most interesting part of this is to listen to people who actually have been involved, are involved in the programme itself, and hear about what their perceptions are and what their reflections are and what they've actually gained. So we'll move on to that bit reasonably quickly. But as Will says, look back at these information slides at your leisure a bit more when you've got a bit more time. This slide is giving you lots of numbers. They may be too small for you to see. Impressive numbers, but I wanted to draw your attention to the left-hand side of the slide, top left, which is all about children. So, you know, whatever we're doing through these leadership programs has to directly or indirectly benefit children, which sounds very obvious, but actually that's from wherever you are in the world today. I think we can safely say this version, this iteration of the NPQH is really good. It's a very strong program. The feedback that we've had is incredibly positive. Look at some of the values there that best practice and OLP stand for. It's very important that you subscribe to a provider who has such high aspirations, expectations of the quality of the program, but also the quality of the people delivering the program and supporting you. And there is a huge team around you supporting you if and when you sign up for the NPQH. Supporting your professional learning, and one of the ongoing themes that I would like to get across, we would like to get across, is this is about you as a leader in your professional roles. And so what does the program mean to you in your leadership capacity, and what difference does that make to you, your staff, your colleagues, and more importantly, your pupils and students? There are common themes running right the way through now. The Department of Education decided some time ago that there will be common themes running right through from very early stages of trainee teacher to early career teacher, and then progressing through the specialist NPQ programs and then the leadership NPQ programs, which I think is a really positive thing. So, you know, we are not reinventing those themes every time we come across a new part of our career development. So we'll provide you with a little bit of that clarity about that journey. Some people will, throughout their career, engage in a number of these programs, which again, I think is a really positive thing. Building on their previous high quality professional training. And there is no, there's no expectation that people will do one, two, some, all of them. But it's actually what's applicable to me now in my role and what is going to benefit me, my leadership, and my setting. There's a lot in the programs which is rooted in evidence, and there's a lot which is rooted in what we're calling, what the DfE calls learn that and learn how to statements, the skills and the knowledge required to be a really effective leader. So what has changed? Let's have a glance at this slide. A little bit more wordy. Implementation, again, is a very important theme. Is it really an issue? Is it an issue that we should focus on as leaders? If it is, let's pick it apart. Let's have a really good, forensic analysis of that issue, and let's work out how to most effectively implement that. Threads are called golden threads for obvious reasons, I suppose. And here you can see, so in specialist programs up at the top, we're focusing on NPQH, and in a moment we'll have a look at who might apply for this. There you go, those who are already, those who aspire to be already head teachers. And it doesn't really matter. Experience of facilitating the program tells me very clearly that you get a whole range of people, a whole range of contexts in the room. There are some people who clearly join NPQH because they're not quite sure whether headship is for them. Invariably, I also have to say the program gives them a huge confidence boost, and by far the large majority come out saying, actually, that's great, and now I feel confident and ready. Program's 18 months long. There is a combination of assessments throughout. Largely the assessments are formative, ongoing throughout the program, bite-sized and manageable. That's a really positive difference between this program and the previous versions of this program. We'll show you a little bit about the final assessment, which is called SAT, summative assessment. We've just been going through that with some NPQH colleagues today, and EL, it's the same. Again, manageable over a period of about 8 days to complete your qualification. And it's 1,500 words with a few more words possibly if people need those. It's how have I applied my practice? How can I apply that research that I've come across? How can I link that to the very important learn that and learn how to statements? Practical application of my learning is a really important golden thread. As a leader, this is where I am. This is where I started. This is what the program has done for me. These are the benefits. This is what I've learned. And these are the areas I still want to develop. Very much domain specific. There's a very important person who supports your journey, if you like, through NPQH, and that is your leadership performance coach. A key person. Feedback on the coaching side of things has been incredibly positive. So you come away from your face-to-face days, and there are 5 face-to-face days. You will have face-to-face, that's virtual, obviously, if you're coming at it from an international perspective. If you're in the UK, that will be actually sitting in a room. Then you will have your sessions with your leadership performance coach, partly one-to-one sessions, partly group sessions. You will also have online tasks to do, your formative assessment tasks to do, and then when you've completed that cycle, you come back to your next face-to-face or virtual face-to-face event, reflect on that, look back, and then cast forward to the next content area, which we'll show in a second. Examples on the screen, again, who might decide that NPQH is appropriate for them. So we've got 3 different levels of leadership already there. I think we've probably covered that. Really satisfying when you lead a group, and in the 18-month period, the group I've just finished with, 3 people have gained headships in the time they've been on the program, which isn't bad going. It's really exciting. There are the content areas if you want to have a quick look down. The DFE framework is available to you all if you just search for any of the NPQ frameworks. And in there, you'll see these content areas supported by the Learn That and the Learn How To statements. Some of those will be very familiar to you. You might feel very comfortable with 2 and 3. You might feel less comfortable with organizational management, depends on your experience and your context. A useful graphic which shows you the whole program. So you've got 4 cycles, as you can see. You then got all the content areas, which we've touched on a little bit. So, for example, course 1, Leading Culture and Ethos. After each of those courses, you'll then have your formative assessment task. Generally speaking, you have a choice on those. It might be that you have a choice of complete 3 of these from 9 or 1 of these from 3. You'll also have practice activities, and you will submit those to your coach and have feedback on those, and that enhances your learning. As I say, the one-to-one coaching and the peer group coaching is really invaluable. Then we get bottom right, an impact review and your summative assessment case study. And again, the dates are given to us by the Department for Education. Lots of people ask about the dates and when the windows and why the windows are there, but just given to us by the Department for Education. Who we're told are trying to protect your kind of holiday times and things like that. Doesn't always work, but it is what it is, and we make that work for our participants. A few of these we've already touched on. Good news is that there is no longer a large or too large school improvement projects for you to complete. So if anybody you speak to about the possibility of joining the NPQH program said, oh, well, you'll have to do this, this, and this in terms of placement, you need to put them right. No, that's the previous model. This model doesn't have that. That's a big advantage for you because we're all very busy and you will be very busy. As I said, 18 months of engagement. You will have to reach certain standards to be successful. 90% engagement. There are KPIs. You will need to attend, for example, all of your face-to-face events or virtual face-to-face events. You'll have to complete at least 90% of other elements of the program, as you would expect. And again, best practice is always there to help you be successful. There's flexibility to a degree if you really struggle, for example, to attend a day or a certain group, and we'll try to find ways for you to actually fit around that and be successful. The length, as you see, the SAT, the summative assessment task, 1,500 words, which, by the way, is not many words by the time you start that, but you have the additional 1,000 words if you want to pad that out to say what you want and need to say. There's an unseen case study, but all the way through the program, without realizing it almost, the participants are engaging in unseen case studies several times, and by the time you get to the final face-to-face day, we will actually give you a case study which is as close to the actual case study as you can get, except it will be unseen. There will be 8 days for participants to complete that, which, although people get a bit twitchy, is a long time. It's obviously over a week, and once they've done that final assessment readiness session, they tend to be very much reassured by the fact that, yeah, I can cope with that and I can deal with that. Today, I reminded them that actually, relatively speaking, compared to what you used to have to do, that's not a bad way to finish the program. I'm sure there will be some questions around assessment, and we're very happy to take those. Now, this is far more interesting because let's speak to some real live participants who have just about completed their NPQH. They've submitted their assessments, and all they're doing now is waiting for those assessments to come back, hopefully with a big tick, and then a nice certificate saying, congratulations, you've successfully completed your NPQH. So we have, perhaps if we could start with you, Martin. Martin is a deputy head teacher in an independent school. And Martin, as I say, has completed all parts of the NPQH very, very recently. So hot off the press. Martin, welcome. Thank you so much for giving us a bit of time this afternoon, because I know it's super busy everywhere in schools, isn't it? I wonder if you, Martin, would just mind starting off, perhaps by talking a little bit about the different elements of NPQH and how they were for you. So I think you were a face-to-face participant as such. So how were those elements for you, and how valuable were they?
Yeah, really valuable, I'd say. The engaging with colleagues from all kinds of different contexts was really valuable. The opportunity to discuss problems that are common throughout lots of different contexts and different approaches was really valuable. It was facilitated really well. I went to 2 different groups for logistical reasons, so there was some flexibility in that. So I signed up for one group, which was in Kensington. So London was the nearest place for me, coming from the south coast. So I initially went to Kensington High Street, a hotel there, and it was facilitated well, but I couldn't make the 3rd and 4th sessions on the dates. So I was able to switch to a different group, which was equally well facilitated. And I met a great group of people. There was a really active WhatsApp group that enabled you to discuss things and share things you might be concerned about, or not that there was anything particularly to be concerned about, but that opportunity to bond and share was really important. Is that useful information?
Yeah, absolutely useful. And thanks for that, Martin. One of the most positive bits of feedback, I think, from participants has been, I have made myself find the time to come out of my workplace, out of school, but I have a great network of colleagues, and I don't know whether you intend to, Martin, but very often, some months, if not years after the events, those NPQ participants still keep their WhatsApp groups going. It's a really valuable network.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. I mean, there's a camaraderie and a kinship when you go through something together, isn't there? And you've always got that shared experience. So I think that the group will keep going. And like you say, it's very valuable to be able to come out of school and have discussions and feel inspired by it as well. And also somewhat that your ideas and your thinking is vindicated, because you can feel a bit alone in school at times, can't you? You're ploughing your own furrow. And when you're able to be reassured that you're in a similar position to colleagues throughout the country, it was definitely worth doing, yeah, from that point of view.
Brilliant, thank you. Martin, I don't know if there are any examples where you could say, well, I went and I learned that either face-to-face or online, and I went back to school and I was able to apply that in some way, or I was able to do something slightly differently or try something different. Is that any examples of that?
Yeah, I mean, probably the most general example of that would be following EEF's implementation guide, because obviously there's a lot of talk in schools about change, and there are a lot of different theories about how to implement change effectively. And, you know, one of the useful things about the approach for NPQH was that it gave you definite strategies that you could hang your hat on and say, this is to some degree proven to work in education. And the EEF's implementation guide, which you pretty much apply to any change project in a school, is quite a nice thing to be able to hang your hat on and say, actually, these guys who know about education, they think this is the right way to do change in education. So that was something that's really early on in the course, isn't it? That was right at the start of the slides you showed earlier. Yeah. And that was definitely something that's really impactful, because that applied throughout the whole course, which is obviously why you put it at the start of the course. So I would say that was something that was important for me, particularly at the start.
That's great, thank you. And again, feedback is is very positive, and a lot of people joining the NPQH program thinking, not everybody of course, but previously I knew there was research out there. I wasn't quite sure I wasn't quite sure what to do with it, but it tends to be that the more people work through the program, that gives them the confidence to actually, that piece of research is really applicable to my setting. I'm going to give that a go, and that gives them that kind of leadership confidence to be strategic. So thank you. Martin, a final question for you, if you don't mind. There's a lot about well-being, there's a lot about workload. If you're a busy head teacher or aspiring head teacher, senior leader, have you any top tips for anybody who's thinking, do I have the time? Is the workload going to impact very negatively on me? And so any tips for getting through that program in one piece successfully without?
Yeah, I mean, I got through in one piece. I mean, there'll be people out there who've done other courses. I've done a master's previously, and I've managed to complete that. And this, in terms of workload, was much easier, I would say. It was definitely manageable. I found that the deadlines were quite tricky actually, but there was flexibility around that. And when I spoke to my coach, they were quite clear, as long as I got the work done by a particular point that we had agreed, that I didn't need to get stressed out about the deadlines basically, because of that, it was manageable. And there were points where I felt I was on track, and there were points where I knew I had to catch up, but I was clear that I was able to do that without being penalised or without it impacting on me. And that meant that I've got a young family. That meant that I was able to do work when it worked for me. So I would say it didn't impact that negatively on my life actually, because I could manage it effectively throughout the year. The assessment as well, I think the 8-day, I know you're going to talk about that, but the 8-day window, that was, again, it worked. It worked because you didn't feel, I didn't anyway, feel particularly under pressure. I felt like I was able to complete a reasonable piece of work. I hope so anyway when I get the result back. But I felt like by the time I'd got to the end of the work, it was the best I could have done, and I might as well submit it even though I had a day left. And that was a position I was grateful to be in. Yeah.
Brilliant. Martin, thank you so much. I appreciate your time because it is super busy. Just come to Samuel in a second. In terms of assessment, lots of people do say, is it a once and once only submission? I might as well answer that question. If you aren't successful at the first hurdle, if you like, and I'm sure you will be, there is another opportunity to access another unseen case study a little bit later on. But the pass rates previously have been very high, I believe, in the high 90s. So just make sure you're in the high 90s and not the tiny percentages that for some reason or other don't manage to. Thanks, Martin. Samuel, if we could bring you in again, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it. Now, the great thing here is that Samuel is currently in Vietnam, so is able to bring us a different perspective as somebody who's been a participant, but virtually internationally, and we do run international groups, as you know. They run exactly the same content, but in a slightly different way, because of course we've got to encompass time zones around the world and so on. Are you still with us, Samuel? I'm hoping you're still there.
Hello, I am, yeah. Good evening.
Good evening to you. Well, thank you so much. It's afternoon here, and unusually it's sunny, which is nice. Samuel, perhaps you'd just give us an insight first of all. So your entire program has been online. Could you just describe what has that looked like and how has that been for you?
Yeah, so the whole program was online, and much like what Martin's previously mentioned there, it's really about the journey that everyone takes together from that day one and perhaps meeting on that first virtual face-to-face event, right up until that final SAT is handed in, and the support with the coaches as well, with those little meetings and opportunities for Zoom meetings throughout the course of the year also. Were there one or two slight teething issues? Not many, no, to be honest. There were one or two technicalities, as there always are with anything like Zoom or the internet being there. But normally it was just minor issues like that. And again, Martin mentioned the WhatsApp groups for the more local teachers and aspiring head teachers in the UK. We also had our own WhatsApp group over in Southeast Asia. So we were able to speak with colleagues from Thailand, for example, Singapore, I believe, and other parts of Vietnam. So yeah, it's very supportive and really, really well led.
Great, thanks, Samuel. Can I ask you then an interesting dynamic? So obviously you're on a screen on Zoom with people from all over the world, but from all sorts of very different contexts. Do you feel, however, that you've benefited as a leader from speaking to leaders who might be in Berlin and Africa and so on?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really the thing that I gain most from being on this course is that shared experience and being able to speak with more experienced aspiring head teachers and gaining knowledge from them. Also to build my own confidence in terms of perhaps how being in an international environment, quite often we can't directly apply perhaps some of the DFE guidelines within an international setting. But of course, the guidelines that are there, you know, for very good purposes, means that we can try to apply where possible. And being able to speak to others about their experiences and how they can apply different parts of the DFE guidelines for their schools is incredibly invaluable.
Great, thank you. And of course, for anybody listening in, there are plenty of opportunities, whether you're on Zoom or whether you're in a hotel room somewhere or a classroom. We build in lots of opportunities for conversation, for reflection, for group talking. And I think colleagues really, really enjoy and appreciate that. Sometimes it's very, very structured. Sometimes it's a little bit almost as though we'll have 10 minutes to chat, to have a moan, to let off steam or whatever, because as Martin was saying, sometimes it can be very lonely as a head teacher or senior leader. Lonely but not alone. I think that's a very important factor. And you're not alone because you're engaging in this great qualification with lots of other like-minded people. Samuel, tricky question maybe, but how has your leadership benefited, would you say? Do you do anything differently? Has it given you any kind of different confidence or leadership behaviors that perhaps before you didn't have?
No, I think definitely it has, yeah. I've always liked to perhaps lead from the heart, but let's put it this way. I think the course really helps you lead from the mind an awful lot more as well. In terms of the research that you're provided with, Martin's previously mentioned there the EAEF, the Education Endowment Foundation, I believe, and how using all of that support and research that's been out there is incredibly applicable to to any kind of change that's being invested within a school. I know for myself as well, it's helped me and other leaders within our school to come together and to discuss solutions to issues. It's helped us to form better bonds with all key stakeholders actually since coming back after lockdown. So actually it's been a really nice opportunity to discuss and like you've said, to discuss there amongst ourselves and with others perhaps how we can become better servant leaders.
Samuel and Martin, really appreciate your time, and I'm sure that the insights you've given have been fantastic for everyone listening today. So thank you.
Can I just reiterate that thanks as well? Thank you so much for joining us and for talking about your experiences. I just wonder whether we could throw in one further question, and it's come through actually just in the chat as we've done it. So Lyndon has already mentioned around the formative assessment tasks and the practice activities that you complete as you go through. And just to switch it up a bit, I wonder if we go back to Martin again. Martin, could you tell us about how those assessments work and the way you sort of get feedback and how those are chunked through the modules as well from a participant's perspective, if you see what I mean?
The formative assessments. Yeah,
the formative assessment before you get to the summative assessment.
Yeah, so they're small tasks. One of the main, well, I say they're small tasks. So one of the things that happens throughout the course is that you're kind of trained or encouraged to write in a shorter format so that you can write appropriately, concisely and succinctly as you'll need to for the final assessment. So you have really, really short word counts in which to express yourself, but that usually represents a slightly larger piece of work. There's choice in the formative assessment, so you can take the course in ways that suit you or suit your interests or suit your development needs. And you complete them in line with the modules that you're doing, so that you're able to develop your thinking around the specific learning points. So so you write something short, a short review that might be about a larger piece of work, whether that's something that you've done in school or whether that's something that you're thinking about or research that you've read. So so that was my experience of that, and the idea is it helps you to write more succinctly for your final assessment.
That's perfect. Thank you. That you've explained it better than I could. So well done. Thank you for that, Martin.
No problem.
The last, and then we'll be on to, I think, something about funding in a second. Just a slide there, which gives you a really good indication about the breadth and the spread of the NPQs being delivered by different providers and different partners. There's always a way of accessing an NPQ wherever you happen to be, which is good news. So let's move on. I think Sammy, Will, one or other, or both of you might be able to just quickly cover a little bit about funding. That's okay.
Yeah, thank you, Lyndon. I'll jump in again here. So the funding is through a scholarship program for the DFE. So these are fully funded courses if you are from an eligible school. Now, eligible schools will be state-funded schools, state-funded 16 to 19 schools. Independent special schools are often eligible. Virtual schools, and I can see one of our attendees is from a virtual school. They are also eligible. Hospital schools and young offender institutions. Sorry, as well as the full funding for the programme, we also have available some targeted support funding, and this is available for the 23-24 academic years. The DFE have some target schools who they would like to further incentivise to complete these qualifications. And so if you are from a state-funded primary school with less than 150 pupils, you could receive a grant payment of up to £800 on top of the fact that the course is fully funded. If you are from a state-funded primary school with more than 150 pupils, there will be a grant payment of £200. And if you are from a secondary school or a state-funded 16 to 19 school with less than 600 pupils, you will also be able to receive a grant payment of £200. So not just fully funded, but also there are some other incentive payments as well. Now, I have to say the caveat is with this is in the next cohort. So go on and apply quickly, because I'm sure these scholarships that the DFE are giving won't last forever. But yes, for our next cohorts, these scholarships are in place.
Brilliant, thank you, Will. That is the end of our presentation slides, which gives us a good few minutes. Unless there's anything else anybody wanted to chip in so far on anything we've said, we've got some time for questions and answers. I know that in the background, some of your questions have already been answered, which is fantastic. I can see a question which I'm happy to come in on from regarding the difference between NPQ SL. What's the biggest difference between the NPQ SL and NPQH? And people often ask the same question about NPQH and NPQ EL. So I have the privilege of being able to present on all of those. There are slight content differences, although as you saw from the 10 content areas at the start of the presentation, those are common themes. So there will be similarities, but bear in mind that those people in the room, and this is probably the biggest difference, are less experienced in terms of their leadership journey. So as facilitators, we tend to try and make those face-to-face sessions as bespoke as possible. One thing that we do is a little bit like a classroom, actually. We delve more deeply through our questioning and through our provocation, through our analysis. There are different sources of research, tapping into the different experiences in the room. But so yes, it's a combination of the content, slightly different, bearing in mind the golden threads are always there, but the level of expectation A lot of independent learning increases as well. NPQ group today, we've been working with less need for us, but what we're doing is trying to provoke those really high level conversations and try to get their level of understanding deeper in whatever their context is. Becky wants to know about the application process, Will, or one of the best practice team. Is there anybody can answer that one?
Sorry, no, Beck, you carry on.
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Rebecca. I'm in the marketing team, so I have a lot to do with brochures and the web page and the application process. So the next application deadline closes on the 25th of June. And this is
Becky, I don't know if I'm struggling to hear. You're very quiet. I'm not sure if that's the same for.
Oh, sorry.
That's better.
That's better. Sorry, that's just me not talking. So the next application deadline is the 25th of July. So that's just after the next summer term finishes. To apply, you just go onto our website, onto the NPQH web page, and the apply now button is right at the top. It will take you through an application process. You'll create an account, go through a 2-part application process. Yeah, and then I think they do ask a few questions about from like the employer and a few reference numbers and things like that. But the team is really good, our customer support team, in helping you through any questions you have. So if you do get stuck on anything throughout the process, just give us a call or an email, and then we'll help you complete and any other information that you need to complete the application.
Brilliant, thank you. That's useful. It's not too onerous a process, but it is a commitment. You know, we do remind people that the application process requires some thought because you're committing to a really good but 18-month program. Thank you. Good question. I'll answer this as briefly as possible. How does completing the program benefit my school? My head will definitely ask me this. Well, you can give him lots of feedback from me indirectly via lots of participants. The whole point of this is that you learn about yourself as a leader and you go back to your school and you apply that leadership. In fact, we talk about workload and well-being. If you are on the NPQH program, there is a strong suggestion that actually you will be far more efficient and effective as a leader, therefore benefiting your well-being, but you will go back as a leader, and whoever you lead at school, if you become a better leader, a more effective leader, then the benefits are huge. Think about why you're joining. All roads lead back to, is this better for my pupils and students? And by being a better leader, the answer would have to be, yes, it will be. One of the biggest differences, people go away being more strategic in their leadership, not just firefighting and being hitting by operational stuff that obviously happens in schools all day, every day. That was me being succinct. But
I would even jump in on top of that as well. And again, from my perspective, I'm able to see the formative assessment tasks that Martin was talking about a little while ago, and how, so literally thousands of these that I can read through, and they talk about how people have applied their learning in their schools, and they also talk about on our online user platform, people talk about the impact that they're having in their learning reflections as well, and they're phenomenal. To read all of the work that's going on in schools and the impact that these participants are having and the things that they're doing in schools make a massive difference. And so as you go through your program, there will be opportunities for you to apply your learning and the research in your schools, and that will clearly have an impact as you're doing it at the same time.
Thanks, Will. Absolutely. Question from anonymous attendee: what access would I have to academic literature? You would have, and I don't know if any of the best practice guys behind there are able to drop a link in to the NPQ framework. If not, you can easily search for that. You will see a whole host of recommended research at the back of that, but also I'm constantly dropping in references to literature, to quotes and so on, as will your online coach, as will your colleagues in the room. So there'll be formally a lot of reference to literature and research, but informally as well, as part of the program. Forgive me, I'm going to get the pronunciation of your name. Is it Brona? Yes, absolutely. You seem perfectly positioned to apply for NPQH, given your experience as a senior leader. Are there any more questions that we haven't seen? I know the back team have answered some brilliantly so far. Any questions about assessment, application?
There are a few. I'm not sure if we've answered these. I think probably Beck did a couple in hers actually. So the deadline for the next program and start date. So deadline. This is the big one now. It's I think 40 days or so until the 25th of July. So that's, please apply before that date. How does complete that benefit the school? We've answered. Oh, and the academic literature. Sorry, Lyndon, I'm repeating these questions you've already seen. So our Canvas portal has a whole resource kit of the EEF resources and additional literature on that as well. And so you can just, these are threaded through your online learning as well. So during the relevant areas, there'll be the relevant literature and research. When does the program start? So we will start the program during October. So October of the autumn term, we will just be grouping our final groups all together in that last piece, and we'll get cracking towards the end of October. People will get their sort of start sort of, I've forgotten what you'd call it. Sorry, my mind's gone blank. But yeah, end of October.
Sammy is answering the question about long-term project completing school. Quick answer to that, Sammy, actually is the idea now that this is an ongoing project, that is just you and your leadership. So there are no specific projects apart from what you would normally be doing in your school, for example, in your leadership role. I don't know Victoria's question. Can you send an example of the type of tasks, please? I know that obviously once you're enrolled on the program, you can see lots of examples of those. I don't know if there are exemplars, Will, or anybody at Best Practice on the site for people to get a look at, but it's a good question, Victoria. Do you happen to know, Will, if someone who's not yet applied can see exemplars or examples?
I thought we did have some on the website, but I will check that, and we'll have a look into that and see if we can send something out. I
think we have answered all of the questions, or are in the process of answering those questions. I wouldn't want anybody to go away disappointed, but if there are no more questions, unless there's anything else from any of our panelists or anybody from the Best Practice team. Location, I mean, obviously it's a chicken and egg. Obviously Best Practice needs to know about numbers and locations before they decide where to run groups, but there's normally a group not a million miles away from you if you're in the UK. Some people do actually quite like to travel a little bit away from their local area, so they're not necessarily working with colleagues from down the road. That's entirely up to you. But there are lots of groups running.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I was just going to say we'll get that information out to you as soon as. So we're at the moment we're filling those groups up very quickly. Your first face-to-face event will be at the end of the autumn term, so that will give you a little bit of extra time. So even though you start the actual program in October, the face-to-face events are a few weeks later on as well. But as Francis has put in the log, we'll try to get that information to you as soon as possible. And once those groups are complete and we've got the venues all set up.
Thank you. Really good question. Possibly the last question from Julie. Is there an expectation that time is given to study during school hours? That, again, my line on this is that if your school, if your head teacher, whoever is your line manager is supportive of you, engaging in a program like this, I would hope that you could have a really good conversation with them about, from time to time, if the workload goes up a little bit, is there any possibility I could have a little bit of time to get on with my NPQH work? Having said that, the program has been deliberately remodeled to make that workload manageable, as our two participants, Martin and Samuel, have actually said. But there will be bumps in the road. There will be times of the year when you're incredibly busy and you've got some deadlines to meet. I would ask the question. There's no expectation. It isn't built into the program, but that's to do with your relationship with your school and your hopefully generous head teachers or principals.
I would just add to that that's why the face-to-face sessions are so valuable, because that it will be generally during school time, and when you go through the application, one of the key bits is to get your sponsor to support your application, and within that we would expect them to support you going on those face-to-face events and to have time out of school to do that.
Yeah, and another really good reason to apply shortly, and is because of the subsidies, and as we said at the beginning, there's even that small payment for schools to support things like cover. So that's a real benefit. I would like to thank you all. You've given us 45-50 minutes from wherever you are of your busy schedules. I'd like to thank everyone from Best Practice today. I think we've had Fran, Will, India, possibly, and Sammy, particularly Martin and Samuel, who've given up their time as participants to give us a really, really valuable insight into the programme and its value. So that will conclude our webinar for today. Please jump on the website to find out more about it if you still have questions. Hopefully that's been useful. Thanks very much, and good luck if you apply.